Hello, 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 hello. Um, it's just me here. Hopefully, I figure this out. But if not, then I'm just going to talk to myself for a little bit. But, uh, wanted to come here today, get some things out there. As we know, this is my therapy. And this is one where I'm just going to talk and you going to listen. Um, so, I was thinking about a conversation I had recently with my daughter. And my daughter is very scholarly. She is very focused. I really admire who she is. She is very comfortable being herself, which, as we know, is not easy for a woman, let alone for a woman of color. um, she is very focused. I remember one of her middle school teachers, or junior high school, depending on where you are and what you call it, but I want to say it was sixth or seventh grade, and the teacher said she knows why she's here, and she's just here to learn, and that's what really matters to her. Um, and so it's just like going to work. And so at the beginning of the year, she had a time. It was she was making an adjustment. It was her first year in high school, and she was making an adjustment to going from eighth grade to high school to an AP class right out the gate. And she had like a minor meltdown, and we talked about it. But ever since then, I've really watched and just kind of paid attention to her. And well, not that I didn't pay attention to her before, but I certainly was paying attention to just her growth. And because I anticipated that she would really, it would push her, but she would come out on top. Just that's just the kind of kid she is, and she's doing just fine, and it's becoming her normal. And um, and so one day we were having a conversation, and she was just talking about, people have things to say and the stuff that people do, and, how focused she is. And she had asked me if I thought she was doing anything wrong. Um, if I thought her being so focused and focusing so much on school and not necessarily the social aspect of school was the wrong approach. And I told her, that and you might take it a kind of way, but that's only that's on you, more on not, because I'm not even talking to anybody specifically. Um, but I told her, I said, regular people don't understand like great people. If everybody understood great people, then everybody would effectively be great. And I really, everybody believes in their child, and I really believe that my daughter is going to do something amazing, whether it be save some unknown species of panda, um, that when she goes traversing through Madagascar, or just saving as many animals as she can, or whatever it might be, or uncovering fossils. She's going to do something like that, and it's going to be beautiful. And I'm really impressed by how she's been able to do that. But it's not easy to push through being questioned by people who don't know. Um, and that is a more macro point. That isn't about her. That is, people will comment on the things that you're doing, despite the fact that they don't know. It's difficult to put yourself out there and know that there is a greater chance than not that not only will you potentially fail, but you will be cast down or cast aside or shamed for doing so. And yet we sometimes today do it anyway. Um, and that's a notable thing. So I thought, and we looked through history, and you realize that everybody who did something amazing had a story. They were tried. Um, they were tried by life. They were tried by circumstance. They were tried by combat. They were tried. And so it's like, do you need that sharpening? Do you need to be sharpened by iron to actually unlock that thing inside of you? That thing that tells you to go on out and use the things, um, use that edge to cut. Um, and so I will tell you a little bit about me, and I think it might, bring some into picture. And to understand, maybe why I am the way that I am, or maybe how, I certainly don't feel as though I've made it, but I believe I've fought through some stuff. So when I was younger, I was one of the many, whether your school or town or municipality called it gifted and talented or just gifted, but I was a gifty. And, in some environments you were, raised up, in other environments you were made fun of. But it was certainly not cool to live in the hood and be smart. Anybody who paints that, Calvin gonna take us all out on the back of his McDonald's check image is not realistic. The real version is more like the Chappelle sketch than like the actual commercial. But the other side of it is, you you reach for things for hope. And my hope as a young man was, that I would be a good student and I would go off and become rich, because that's what happened when you went to college, and take my mom out of the hood. And I say it like that intentionally, but take my mother away from the environment that we were living in, buy her a big house, buy her a boat, buy her whatever car, all of the things that came with the life that I did not have. And that's not to say I was, scrounging around in trash cans, just saying that I was certainly not well off. And so I continued on, and kind of, made my way through school, and was lucky enough that I caught on to things easier than most, I would say. Um, so when I was 13 years old, my mother passed away. I got the chicken pox, was out of school. And then while I was out, my mother passed away. And, things had changed by then. I had a brother and a family, and what have you. But for a significant amount of time, considering I was 13, for a significant portion of that, it was just my mother and me. And everywhere we went together. And whether it be taking city buses across Rhode Island or walking, across the bridge, because we didn't necessarily have bus fare or whatever it was. I would go to her modeling shoots, because she was she was an actual model, not an Instagram model, because we didn't have an Instagram then. She was on combs and picks and hair products and whatever. So if you're bored and you want to look it up, the name of the product is Freedom Curl. If you ever happen to have any merchandise or any product somewhere, look, I came across a bunch of picks and combs on eBay at one point, and so I bought them all. But certainly let me know. But it was Freedom Curl by a company named Cornell Enterprises in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. So we would go from East Providence all the way to Woonsocket, which by Rhode Island standards is far as hell. By a lot of other places, not so much, but by Rhode Island standards, you might as well been, go into Alaska. But we would do that together. And that's just to paint the picture of how important my mother was to me. Because for stretches of time, she was all I had. And so when she passed, it meant a lot. And I look back and I'm chuckling because of something that's going to come out later. But there were various phases. I hit the street phase. I was just gonna be in the streets. There was no reason not to, and so I did stuff. And I was never the tough guy, but I was kind of the kid who hung out with tough guys. And even within that environment, I was kind of known as the smart kid. But I was still in that environment. Sometimes I got punked being in that environment, but everybody just kind of, I think, accepted that I was who I was, and I was cool with them. In fact, I was called, one nickname was the street nerd, and then I evolved to a corporate thug. But I was so cool, I spray painted and very terrible writing on the end of my street, which I never got in trouble for, which is so wild. Anyway, but I made it through school and made it through high school, the next year, and went off to Boston College. But I never really figured it out. I never really got that motivation. My brother served as that motivation for a stretch of time. because I was always told, I was brought up in the oldest is like a secondary parent. When I'm not here, you're going to step in. And that's a lot of responsibility to put on an oldest. And I try not to do it myself, but it was also the era that we lived in. And I appreciate that parents evolve in time. And there's certain things that we pick up and certain things that we lose. And that's just how it is. But parents are also the only people who want to see you do better than them. And that's really all I want. I want my kids to just do better, be happy. Um, but I made it through that and kind of struggled my way through. Never really felt the urge to push. Always being smart enough to get by. I did. And, never really felt that urge to push. And, went to work and continued what I think most would consider a normal life. And then I became a father. I met a woman, all of that, but then I became the father to a little girl. And that was where the motivation came in. That was where it was, okay, you got to figure this shit out because you have someone behind you. And that, when combined with having a family and getting to where I am, is really what probably saved someone becoming a what if story or a could have been story. And I am not successful by the standards that I think a lot of people set because I have a younger brother to live up to, but I'm me and he's him. And we we don't compete, but some other people view it as such. And I think some people who said that, they thought I had nowhere to go, like I was this lost cause. And I might have been a little confused, but I was never a lost cause. At least I didn't think so. But then I go on and run for office in a town and face those attacks and and so on. But it has all shaped me to realize that the reason all of these things before sharpened me for what's next. They provided me with the backbone and the strength to be able to serve in the capacity and live the life that I am and support what I have. Um, what do I have? Um, I have a life, and the role that I play and the fight that I fight and the willingness to tell the truth and the willingness to share my story and the willingness to do all of these things and teach my child to be better has all been honed by what came before. And so, I think one of the toughest things is figuring out how to pick yourself up, how you get out there, when you've lost it all, or, the hope is gone, or the will, or the energy, or whatever it is. But you get out there and you figure it out. Um, I remember had a relationship and I had broken up and it was one of those, young, you know, kind of things, but I never thought I would make it. I remember the important part of this is my grandfather said he was impressed because I had lost a job and lost my girl. And instead of, he was like, and you were upset for like 24 hours. It was like, but then, I burnt through so much postage and FedEx and everything sending out resumes. And he said that was when he felt like I would be okay. I at least had the hustle or the drive to do something. And that didn't mean much until later, until more recently when I started to be able to provide, similar perspective to people and do similar things and, provide advice to my own child. And I think of how many times I quote him and how much I've learned and, strive to be a better person today than yesterday. But at the same time, um, you'll always face those obstacles and they become burdens when you let them build. You you push through them, you battle them, you do whatever, but you always come out a better version. And you never necessarily know what your limits are until you're pushed to them. Had I never gone through what I consider the toughest thing, that I've ever faced, which is the loss of my mother at 13. I would have never been able to handle you know, being screamed at by a bunch of people for telling the truth, just because my truth is different. My perspective is different. My experiences are different. But instead of accepting that my experiences are different, or that I'm a different person and thus maybe getting a different version of the person you know, instead of that, I just get screamed at and told I am the one who is mistaken. And I would have never been able to handle that. And it's it was a cool thing to kind of be able to explain that to my daughter one day, and the fact and just it's my normal. It doesn't mean, and I've accepted it as my normal as we talk about race and injustice in the world. It's um, a friend of mine says, race is a thing, and until we just kind of overcome it, there's nothing you're going to be able to do. And I think that's kind of trivializing it a bit, but I do think racism is part of my norm. And I think the difference between me and a lot of people, particularly people who aren't melanated, um, is that race is part of my normal. And that race is part of my normal. So I think subconsciously, you are telling yourself and me that it is part of my normal. So just accept some of it. And some people who look like me are telling me that I should just accept some of it. Damn, I wish I had brought some water. Sorry. Um, but anyway, um, so, but it's not, or it is, but it shouldn't be. Why does that have to be part of my norm? Why do I just have to take it? If somebody else was willing to accept that it was part of slavery was part of everybody's normal at one point, that doesn't make the shit okay. Normals change. You know, my my perception of where things are and where my life is and what is successful is not the same as mine was even, I don't know, 10 years ago. But it's certainly not the same as my parents. Their normal, the life that I grew up with, was normal to me. Going to the store and paying, 20 bucks on a light bill was my normal at a point. Going to the store buying my grandmother Players Menthol Light 100s until she switched to Newports at 12, 10, 14, 15 years old. All of them was part of my normal at one point. It's not now. Um, and so why can't we accept? Why can we know that that was the reality, but not accept that the reality is that that normal isn't necessarily right, and that normal certainly isn't going to stay the normal. Um, it seems so simple, and one of the cool things about sitting here and talking to you is that it's easy for me, or it's easy for you to be able to listen. Now, you might be, slamming your hand or rolling your eyes or whatever, but you're listening. And if you're listening, then maybe you're relating, maybe you're not. Maybe you think I'm crazy, maybe I put something in perspective. People will say it's easy to, call out, or easy to complain. It's easy to do all of these things, but if it's so easy, then more people would do it. And suffering the consequences of doing things. It's easier to suffer the consequences when you are wrong, or when you're lying, or when you've done something incorrect. It is not easy to suffer the consequences when you feel like you're right, or when your motives are, I don't want to call them pure, but genuine, when you're trying to do or trying to help or whatever it is, but when these are your motives, and this is where there theoretically there is no motive, and yet you are suffering the consequences of that, it's not so easy. I'm a salesman. It's what I do for a living. It's how I feed my family now. Some people will talk about or will have a perspective of salesman, but it's not. It's corporate salesman. If you know what I do, you know what I do. If you don't know, I'm not going to sit there and explain it. What I'm going to say is I face rejection a lot, and you have to get to a point where you accept that rejection and you swallow it. But then you also have to face the fact that everybody is going to shit on you for losing, despite the fact that they know, and they're going to give you advice, despite the fact that they know they don't want that job. And you're just going to take that shit because it's just part of your norm. It's annoying as hell. You might go home, pick a stuffed animal, have a bourbon, wipe it all away, and then get back and do it all over again. But it's still, that's just how it works, and that's how it's gonna go forever. And so all of these things, maybe I'm a masochist. I umpire too. Maybe I just like being wrong or being yelled at for, you know, maybe that's my thing, and I'm into it. When I write a book, I'll remember this moment. I was actually trying to come up with something pitchy, and then I put a combination of words together that just would not have been good to put to the universe. But we we go through all of these challenges, and we face all of these things, and we fight all of these fights, and it's part of what makes us us. But the fun part is it's the stuff that you do as you get to that point, or the reasons that you do it, or or whatever it is. But it's our own respective battle, and we have to figure out how to shorten the cycle or the amount of time that we are down before we come back up. The amount of time that we are sitting there and we're facing whatever it is that we're facing, because we're allowed to mourn, and nobody else is allowed to tell us how long we mourn. We can mourn an hour, we can mourn a minute, we can mourn a lifetime, and it's never wrong. Um, and I use mourning in the way of you know suffer or face the consequences or be sad or be hurt or whatever. It's all mourning, but it's ours to live with. It's ours to battle through. It's ours to handle. And then, but as we're going through it, remember that on the other side, we are going to come out that much better. And at some point, it makes us the version of us, and how we handle it. Um, the um, it's not about what's the saying? It's not about how what you have to, or the challenges you face or whatever it is. It's how you respond to them. Or that's the part you can control. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to the things that are happening. Um, yeah, it's the only choice we have. It's the only thing that we can go out there and do, and it just is. Um, and so back to well, when I was talking to my daughter, all of that was part of what made me me, and all of those challenges and me trying to help her and kind of put her in that perspective is what's going to make her facing those challenges this year. You know, inspired all of these thoughts. Her facing those challenges this year inspired all of those thoughts. Um, because it's been a really cool thing to just watch her develop through that, watch her face those challenges. And so hopefully, You know, I might have just been spitting out a whole shitload of words that don't make sense. This was potentially something that, a bunch of stuff on my mind as we go through the world and the life and the shit that we're facing right now. I don't even necessarily try. I'm not as engaged as I was before, and it's not a matter of giving up. It's more that at this point, we've all fought, we've said the truth. Like, what's the point in complaining about it? It's going to play out, and all you can do is respond to the shit that's happening. Complaining about it isn't going to get us anywhere. Um, just talking about that crazy thing that someone did or that crazy thing that he did last week or yesterday or this morning or whatever isn't going to fix anything. How we respond to the events, how the person that we become as a result of the events, the things that we're doing um, to push through these next 4 years, and the person that it makes us. I think there are certainly people, I would say particularly the, I would say, Latinx community that went through the F around and is now in the find out phase of things. I think some of them, particularly of lighter skin, are facing a realization. There are people out there who have lost their jobs because they didn't believe him. They kept going through well, he's just saying that to win an election, and he wasn't just saying that. Um, and now he's proved all of that, and he's proved all of that to you. So it's me trying to live and parent, work, and all of these other things, and just prepare myself for the day to day and not be surprised by anything anymore. That's really going to get me through it. Living through it, watching the news, letting it shape my mood every day is not going to be that thing. Um, Spending more time with my kids and all the other shit, because this shit is tiring. That's going to be the only way I think I'd be able to get through it. I can't let my energy just be so volatile at this point. I can't let my energy get sucked out by somebody else's negativity. We saw it, we see it, we've told it, we told people what would happen. We fought. Some people believed it, some people didn't, and some people are happy about it. Like, it's not like everybody out there is miserable and struggling. Some people are living just fine. So it's not like it's miserable for everybody. And I realize that. I think we've gotten to a place where like everything is just such a dichotomy. And then there's a lot of gray to live through. Um, there are consequences to some of the decisions that some of you have made. Um, or not so much the decision, but why you made the decision. I think the unwillingness to admit the truth and just say, I made that decision anyway. Yes, I knew that there was the chance of, or that it was windy and the lighter would blow out or would blow over and set something on fire, but I wanted to light it anyway, or I wanted to light that cigarette, or whatever. That was an awful metaphor. Uh, but we knew it. We made that choice, um, and we are either liking our decision or not. I don't think people are being honest about it one way or the other. I think there are people who were probably liking it or flourishing in it who don't want to admit it. And there are people who don't like the decision they made, and but they're so committed. And there's just a lot of people lying. The truth isn't necessarily that common or that popular right now. Um, and that's why those of us who tell it are sitting there getting shit on for it. Um, and then certainly, I'm sorry, I'm relatively monotone, but I'm not miserable or sad or anything like that. It's just very matter of fact. It's also, we look at, I don't walk around carrying grudges. I don't think about anything. I made decisions about some people who will be in my lives and some who won't. And I made decisions based on mostly my perception of, if it's more recently, it's my perception of why they've made the decisions they've made or how or the significance that, my family or myself play in their lives and some previous decisions. It's just the unwillingness to be the person that you've presented yourself as. Whether it's being this, open-minded, welcoming, all-inclusive person and recognizing that maybe you're not as inclusive as you thought you were, and instead of realizing that and trying to grow from it and have a real conversation about it, you are just declaring someone else wrong, or it's the former. You're More recently, you made a decision, and instead of just telling the truth and saying like that part of it didn't matter, you're trying to convince me that that part doesn't exist, and they're two different things. And I could handle just someone being honest more than I can handle someone either lying or trying to trick me. Um, but that's really it. This has been a little bit of everything, or a little bit of a lot. I'll be back. We'll be back. There's a couple things, in the works right now. It's also been a very beginning start to the year with work and life and changing of seasons and so much going on. Um, about to enter baseball season, so I have umpiring and whatever. So to certainly don't take anything from the fact that I am by myself. I am just in there having a conversation and getting some shit off my chest. But all right, in the meantime, I'm sorry, my mouth is dry as hell. So if I've been sitting there making weird faces, that's why. Um, but whatever. If nobody told you today, I love you, and y'all be good. Peace out.